So I'll just get right into this because Jason's selection of this movie it's a musical. It has black people in it. So Dreamgirls is a 2000, and Chae had not seen it before this, and neither have I, so there's no history to talk about here. Dreamgirls is a 2006 American musical drama film written and directed by Bill Condon. If you don't know who Bill Condon is, then, well, you should. He did a lot. There's a Kiss of the Spider Woman coming out this year. The last couple of things he's worked on were he was the writer for The Greatest Showman, which every one of you have seen. He was the director of the 2017 Beauty and the Beast. So that's where you all know him from, whether you knew that or not. He also directed Twilight, Breaking Dawn Part 1 and Part 2. He is the monster that was responsible for Kinsey, which was about Kinsey, who was, of course, a monster. He is the writer for the film of the musical Chicago. He wrote and directed Gods and Monsters, for which there's an Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay. He did the 1987 Sister Sister. So that is Bill Condon. You know him, you just didn't know you knew him. There we are. Adapted from the 1981 Broadway musical of the same name, Dreamgirls is a film a work of fiction taking strong inspiration from the history of Motown, which I am familiar with because it's all I heard growing up in my parents' house. And its superstar act, The Supremes. You know The Supremes, you've heard The Supremes, even if you didn't know they were The Supremes. The story follows the history and evolution of American R&B music during the 1960s and 70s through the eyes of a Detroit girl group known as The Dreams and their manipulative record executive. The adaptation features an ensemble cast of Jamie Foxx, Beyoncé Knowles, and Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy is national treasure. And Jennifer Hudson, Danny Glover, Anika Noni Rose, and Keith Robinson in supporting roles. Dreamgirls debuted in 4 special roadshow engagements on December 4th of 2006 before its nationwide release December 15th of 2006 with a production budget of $80 million, of which it was a fair success. Dreamgirls is one of the most expensive films to feature a predominantly African-American starring cast in American film history. The film received positive reviews from critics, who particularly praised Condon's direction, the soundtrack, costume, and production design, and performances of the cast, in particular Hudson, Murphy, and was also a commercial success, grossing $155.4 million worldwide. At the 79th Academy Awards, it received 8 nominations, winning Best Supporting Actress for Hudson, which she truly deserves, Best Sound Mixing, and at the 64 Golden Globes, it won 3 awards, including Best Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy, as opposed to The Substance, which was neither a musical nor a comedy. More on that later this year. All right, I don't want to get into like a strict block synopsis of this thing. It'll take way too long. Just know that we meet this girl group early on. They are managed and they are touring, and then things fall apart, and they are taken over by Jamie Foxx, who is basically our big time evil record executive running this iteration of what we're calling Motown. There are marriages, there are relationships, there was falling apart. Eventually, Jennifer Hudson, who's kind of the diva in all of this and demanding, is excised from the group, and she kind of goes her own way. I think she's replaced by Beyonce. There's more success. There are more trials and tribulations. Eventually, she comes back and performs with them again. Also along for the ride is Eddie Murphy, who's kind of like a not Rick James. He's kind of like Living in America, Jason. Who am I thinking of? James Brown.
James Brown?
He's kind of like a James Brown analog. Or maybe Curtis Mayfield, I think his name is. That kind of a thing. We kind of follow him for a while. There's more, but it's a long movie. That's probably why I'm struggling with trying to sum this up.
It's super long.
Yeah, this is 2 hours and 10 minutes, and my girlfriend's exact response to this was a snooze. And while I enjoyed the movie, yeah, this can be a bit of a slog to get through. I'm gonna say this, and then I'll throw it over to Chae. I like the movie, but I like the movie because I'm interested in how a very iconic and sort of staple of American culture, specifically American Black musical culture that has been with us since then and is continuing to influence music today, whether you realize it or not, kind of sort of came to be. It's a weird musical in that I didn't that for the first third of the movie, anything that had to do with the music was on stage. And it isn't until Jennifer Hudson finally has enough of what's going on and kind of erupts and wants to leave the group that I realized, oh, they're gonna sing talk to each other like you do in a musical. That is way into this movie when that happens. Like, oh my god, that's what this is. So it was a weird transition, and it was like that they waited that long into the movie to do that kind of weirded me out. Because then they keep doing it.
I actually do have some commentary on that because
yeah, go ahead.
This is a very theater person's movie.
Okay, tell me what that means.
It is made by people who have some very intimate knowledge of how theater works, of theatrical history.
Well, it is done by the guy who did Chicago and Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, and it is very much this is a film that was made to get theater people very excited. And part of that is actually in the pacing of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that they did the first third of this film, where the only music that they were playing was on stage,
right,
is actually because that is how musical movies started. It was the Bing Crosby and the Elvis film. That was the musical. It was a road trip where the only time that the actors sang was when they were performing on stage.
Oh gosh, my ex-wife's favorite Christmas movie does a lot of that. Shit.
White Christmas.
That's the one.
Yeah. And it actually it does a really brilliant transition, because what it does is it transitions from that period of time into the 1950s spectacle musical movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then as they move into the 1970s, it moves into what we know of as the modern musical movie.
Which is half of the dialogue is. I don't know if you've seen Amelia Perez yet. We talked about it. Robert and I, it drove him right up the wall. But we talked about how scenes will start off in normal dialogue and they will suddenly slip into a song and you don't even realize it's happening. It's like being choked by a snake.
Yeah.
And I liked about it.
Oh yeah, and I absolutely loved it. And I thought that it was a really fun little detail that you could potentially miss if you haven't paid attention to a lot of the really early musical movies.
Okay, that's really good, Chae. Something I didn't know. By the way, have you seen Amelia Perez yet?
I have not.
You have Netflix. You should. Get some culture in your life, goddammit. What are you doing here? Listen, I will throw it over to Jason in just a second. Say, I wish this had been shorter. 2 hours and 10 minutes is a little long for this sort of thing. I don't know why we seem to think musical and let's make it 5 hours. I have the same problem with Wicked. But I think you tighten this up a bit, and I think you've got a much more fulfilling, interesting story. Jennifer Hudson is so good, and I made the joke earlier, I am accidentally becoming a fan of hers because I didn't watch American Idol, and I really didn't follow the woman. I didn't know anything about her until we watched Aretha, and then oh my god, she's amazing. And then I didn't know she was in this. I just kind of it made the list because Jason said throw it on the list, and so I watched it cold. I didn't look up anything about it. And she's so good. My comment about Cynthia Erivo from Wicked was she can sing and she can act. She can't sing and act at the same time. I said the same thing of the star of The Little Mermaid from a few years ago. I actually just had to make this point to my coworkers. The girl is pretty as a peach. She can sing, she can act. What she can't do is both at the same time. And then you have Jennifer Hudson, who should be teaching a master class in singing and acting at the same time. Beyonce Knowles is better than I thought. Is the best thing I've ever seen her in. Because she's another one who struggles with acting. She kind of gets by on her looks and her singing, and her charisma. But here she's really good.
Illuminati.
Shut up. The last thing I'll say is Jamie Foxx is an underrated actor. I don't think he gets a lot of credit because people he does things like Electro in Spider-Man in the Amazing Spider-Man 2. People. I don't think he gets the credit that he deserves for the performances that he gives, but he is an extraordinarily good actor and definitely carries his role very well in this movie. I like the music, but I like Motown. I grew up with it. Saturdays in my house were cleaning the house and listening to my mother's, cousin Brucey, WCBS FM, or Motown records or Elvis or that kind of stuff. So like this hit me where I lived as a child, and I liked it. I just wish it had been shorter. Jason?
Yeah, it's a great movie. I mean, Jennifer Hudson is phenomenal. I'm, you know, like you said, Mark, I became a fan of her last year when we did the Aretha Franklin story. She has such a powerful voice
Yeah.
and just such a presence to pull off some of the things. I think she would have been a superstar back in the Motown era.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's why she plays a lot of these Motown icons, is because she can channel that and not only bring that charisma, but the powerful voice to the scenes, the songs too. I agree. This movie could have been cut down to a good hour 45 would have been my limit
Yeah.
because I started about the hour 45 mark. I started just like, how much longer do I got to go and stuff. A lot of filler in here.
Yeah.
Jamie Foxx is phenomenal. We'll be talking more about him next week as well when we cover any given Sunday and Willie Beeman. But I became there's two roles Jamie Foxx made me fall in love with his acting. One being Collateral, opposite of Tom Cruise. The other was Ray.
Yeah.
Neither one of you have seen Ray. I highly recommend seeing it because Jamie Foxx does an amazing job as Ray Charles.
Yep.
And for Jennifer Hudson to stand out in this star-studded cast, and she was fairly young,
Mm-hmm.
and to not only have that presence on screen with all these icons, but to be awarded for it speaks volumes to her acting and her presence itself. So yeah, the only thing that I say is they could have cut it down to about an hour 45, and this movie would have been perfect.
Shay, take me home, baby doll. What'd you think of Dreamgirls? Was this also the first time you'd ever seen it?
Yes, this was the first time I had ever seen it. And I actually went in with a very different idea of what it was supposed to be. Because Dorian had warned me that it might fall under the Shea doctrine, which is it is beautiful and it is important, and I hated it.
Yep.
But it actually ended up being something that I really loved. It is very much a theater person's musical. Like I said before, it's got the pacing references to the different styles of musical theater throughout the years. I absolutely loved the Motown. I did not grow up with any kind of Motown or anything in my life.
Mm.
I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. A lot of it was classic rock and country music until I was like 13 when I started getting into emo and
Well, I don't know if you know this or not, but Jason and I are soul brothers.
Yeah, she grew up as a Carry On My Wayward Son.
Yeah.
It's by Kansas.
We got it. Keep going, Shay.
But this was a really beautiful musical. I absolutely loved the music in it. The sets were spectacular. The costuming was absolutely on point. It was 100% correct for each of the time periods that it was happening in, and it was absolutely fantastic. And it was nowhere near as heavy as I thought it was going to be. It's very much an interpersonal drama about all of these people that are working in show business.
Right.
And yeah, there are things that are happening around them, but that's really not the focus of the film. The focus of the film is these people and their talent and the problems that arise from that, and also how shitty Jamie Foxx's character is.
Yeah.
And I thought it was honestly really fantastic. Um, it probably was a little bit long, but I also didn't notice it nearly as much. Coming from someone who has worked backstage at musicals for 10 plus years, 4 hours for a live musical is honestly not that bad.
You get an
But
intermission, and it's a different
yeah,
beast.
exactly. You get an intermission with a movie, you don't get that intermission.
Right.
And I feel like some of that was a little bit of a lost in translation where they were trying to make it seem very much like a live show.
Also, musicals have two denouements,
Yes.
and that's the problem with this film is that it just keeps going. It keeps going. This is like baking bread. It just goes on and on and on and on, and then you just
It's
by the
like the
time
song
it
that never ends.
yeah, and
It
then by
goes
the
on and
time
on,
it's
my
over,
friend.
you're like you need. I like what you're saying about like this is like a theater person's movie. The problem is they don't really give you the theater experience because it's a film. Kind of like what I was saying about Purple Rain. I don't know if you got to hear the discussion, but there were some of this where film and theater, just like film and books, are not the same thing, and they have to be treated differently.
Yeah. And again, there was some translation lost in here, which
Hmm.
I think is a little bit odd because I don't think this was a live show before the movie was made. I don't think this is based off of anything that was on Broadway.
The 1981 Broadway musical of the same name.
Oh, okay. So it was based off of a
Yeah.
musical.
Yes. Very much so.
I guess I just hadn't ever heard of the Dreamgirls musical.
Neither did I until we did this podcast, lady. So, all right. Anything else about Dreamgirls before we close out for the night?
Um, I do have to say I didn't really like Eddie Murphy in this.
Oh, you're killing me, kid. I had such nice things I was going to say to you when this was over, and now I'm taking them all back. Eddie Murphy is a saint. You don't besmirch the good goddamn name of Eddie. My girlfriend didn't like him either. It's fine.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem was that he wasn't playing anyone other than himself. Um, and it kind of took me out of it, specifically when his character was on screen, because I've seen Eddie Murphy in some other stuff, and I do think he's funny when he's playing Eddie Murphy, but I've seen other things where he's not playing Eddie Murphy and he's fully capable of playing another character.
Might
My
I
name is
offer
Dolomite.
I'm going to offer a counterpoint to that. I think Eddie Murphy is doing James Brown, and I think James Brown's personality is a lot of people's personality, especially in show business.
Okay, that's very likely. I know of James Brown, but I have not done any research on him. So I don't know if that's what he was actually like
I'm
or
gonna send you the Metal Hammer of Doom extra Jason and I did, Jesse and I did when we reviewed the Rocky IV soundtrack. And James Brown, I don't know if you've ever seen Rocky IV, but James Brown does a live performance of Living in America. First of all, it's one of the funniest things I've ever done with Jesse. But if you want to capture the essence of who and what James Brown was, you have to see him doing Living in America. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
okay.
All right, but you didn't love Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, like Eddie Murphy was kind of the weakest part of the film for me.
Okay.
But I love spectacle films and like anything to do with old Hollywood and shit like that. I
So,
also really
have
love
you like
monster
have you
films.
seen Babylon yet?
I have not.
Oh my God! Go if you have Paramount Plus. When we're done here, go watch Babylon, and you'll thank me in the morning, especially after the elephant. Never mind. You'll just watch it. Tell them Mark sent you. You'll like Hollywood and spectacle. Oh boy.
Tell Large Marge sent you.
That's right. Jason, any final words here about Dreamgirls? If not, we're gonna start to close out because I have an appointment at 11 o'clock.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to get out of here too. 4 a.m. comes awful early.
Yes,
I
sir.
know. I mean, um, Dreamgirls is a fine film. Definitely something to look into, especially if you want that Motown history. I pair this with, you know, or if you're just on a Jennifer Hudson kick, pair this with the with respect and spend a good afternoon, you know, admiring Jennifer Hudson's acting performances as well as their singing. But highly, I would, like I said, I would recommend it if you want that Motown history lesson.